Hi, my name is Tanja and I'm the founder of Precious Little Lambs, Reborn Nursery. A lot of people ask me how did I come to being a reborn artist, and I would like to share that with you today. My journey started in 2006 when I took on the responsibility of raising my goddaughter when her mother had postpartum and was unable to do so. My first night with Caitlin, she was 2 weeks old, to give her mother a one-night break. And Caitlin was 3 weeks old, there to find out that her mother was in an abusive relationship. After she was out of that relationship, she was unable at that time to care for her newborn daughter due to the fact that she was also struggling with trauma from the abusive relationship and because of the postpartum depression. And the fact that the baby was a crying baby, excessive crier, due to the high stress pregnancy. Before I offered to take the baby overnight to give her a break. And that night became another night, and another night, and another night. I would go back and forth to her home between my home so that the baby still knew who her mother was, her voice, her face, so that when the time came that she wanted her baby back, that she would know who that person was. But months went by, and even though we always saw each other, she couldn't develop that connection due to trauma. So Caitlin and I had our own journey. To me, she was my baby girl. I got up every 2 hours like any other mother. I took care of her, all her needs, feeding, changing, cuddles, and making sure that she was safe and content in meeting her milestones. And about when Caitlin was about 8 months old, people were telling the mother that if the baby didn't return to her home, that they were going to call authorities and try and get custody of Caitlin. Due to the fact that I am not related to the mother, it would be much more difficult for me to fight to have the child stay with me if that's what the mother wanted. So the mother, in fear of losing custody, in fear of me losing that child, she told me I had to bring the baby back. And that was the beginning of not my trauma only, but also Caitlin's trauma. Every time I came back and forth from the home, Caitlin would scream for me and cry for me. It was torture for her, and it was torture for me. I decided that it was best that I took time away from Caitlin in order for her to get to know her mother, in order for her not to continuously go through the trauma of me coming and going. This was the hardest decision I ever made in my life. But I know that I made the right decision because her needs had to come before my needs. And I had no rights here. I was simply the best friend of the mother of the child that had no rights. Even though it would have been best for Caitlin would to be stay with me, that's not how the law sees it. After Caitlin left, I started to have night terrors and nightmares. And I would wake up thinking I heard her screaming, thinking I hear her crying. And I would look everywhere, in her playpen, in her bouncy chair, anywhere I could possibly look, thinking that she could be. But I knew she was always in her playpen beside my bed. And I panicked. Where is the baby? Where did she go? My mom would remind me that the baby was with her mother. It was a constant battle. I dropped to a severe depression, to the level of not leaving my home. In fear, as if I saw a mother and a baby, what that would do to me mentally. As I could barely handle the fact that I could even possibly run into Caitlin. And if she heard my voice, she would start to scream for me. And I couldn't do that to her. So I began living a caterpillared life. As time went on, I decided to use my emptiness and my love for Caitlin to help parents in need of a trustworthy child care provider. So I became a nanny. At times I was the nanny, working for Pacific families, traveling with those families, whatever they needed for their children. And those children grown and went to school full time, and I wasn't needed around. I opened a daycare in my home and helped many children, many parents. I got to watch a lot of milestones with children. I even practically raised 3 boys until they went to school. But those children cannot replace that hole, that emptiness that stays with me. That is Caitlin. Years and years and years, almost nightly, I'd still have these nightmares about Caitlin, wondering where I am, crying for me. I even had dreams that her mother would show up at my door and say, "Here, she should be with you." But that didn't happen. Mother eventually moved away, so far away that I couldn't afford to barely see her. I would see Caitlin 3 more times, up to the age of 14 years old. But she is now 17. Due to issues in the relationship with my best friend and other people surrounding it, it was time that I went my own way. Now that Caitlin was almost an adult, it was time I let her fly her way and pray that someday she may want to see me again. On her terms, in her way. Please stay. Please come back for part 2. Here we are to part 2. Sorry, I'm having trouble keeping her arms there. Here we are to part 2. We talked about what I've gone through, the loss of Caitlin. Not that she died. Maybe that infant that was taken from me felt like a death. But she's alive and well, living her life. But I've never lost that connection to that precious baby that I raised as my very own daughter. Along comes another tragedy in my life later on. I decided, after being a nanny and running daycares for 20 years, that I wanted to have my own child. And I knew I would be able to raise my own child. So I got a donor that I knew in person who was willing to stay in the child's life so she would know, or he would know, who their father was, because that was extremely important to me. I went to have my first cycle, which is another form for insemination, is called cycle, which is all done medically. I had 2 cycles at that month time. They were concerned about how low the line was compared to the month before on my ovulation test. So they decided, before I went through another cycle, that they were going to run an ultrasound. And that ultrasound found a 30 centimeter cyst all the way around, 30 centimeters, growing off one of my ovaries, pushing my liver out of place and soon to attach to my other ovary. They were concerned that I had cancer. And being that I had just lost a dog to cancer 2 weeks before my surgery, that was all that I could think about. Worried, who's going to take care of my autistic mentally ill sister? Who's going to take care of my dogs? And who was going to be there for my mom? They thought the best decision for my life was a full hysterectomy. They said that these are going to happen again and again and again. I didn't want to bring a child into the world if the child was just going to lose their mother, or if I had to make a heartbreaking decision between my life or my child's life if I was in that situation again. So I agreed, with a full broken heart, that I had to do the hysterectomy. My surgery was posted as soon as possible. Usually there's months and months and months of wait. But they looked at my surgery as a life-saving operation because of the size of the cyst, and if it would have burst, it would have put me at great risk of severe infection, causing shock to my body. I remember lying there in the hospital bed before they brought me in the operating room, knowing that this surgery was the loss of any child I were to have. It felt like another loss. Loss of Caitlin, and now loss of my own biological child. I didn't know how to connect to that pain. I didn't know how to compare it because I didn't lose a physical child this time. I lost the children I dreamed of having someday. I was broken inside. My sister was placed in the hospital during my surgery because she could not mentally cope with the fact that she could lose her sister. A surgery is always very high risk for me. I had my surgery. There were a lot of complications. I had internal bleeding, which I had blood transfusions on the first day and the second day that saved my life after I had a cold blue. I'm very grateful to the nurses and doctors who saved my life. I had a laparotomy incision, so I was cut all the way down my stomach because I had to go through all my organs, my colon, and make sure that there was no signs of cancer and that all the organs were placed properly where they should have been, that the cysts had moved out of place. Very grateful to everyone and all their hard work and the fact that I did not have cancer. Not everyone has that blessing. It was hard for me to be angry because I felt like I was being selfish because I didn't have cancer. I was alive. But I didn't have my lifelong dream of being a mother. So I looked in, how can I make this a possibility? So my best friend offered to carry a baby for me. But we couldn't afford the lawyer fees. It cost as much as a brand new car. I looked into fostering. I was denied due to attachment issues. I had no way to be a mother. I had all this love in my heart, all this education of childcare, a lot of patience and strength with children, working in children's ministry, always wanting to be around children my entire life since I was a young child. I have great love in my heart for children and animals. People say get a dog. I have dogs. But I don't want to force my dog to do something they don't want to do because I'm feeling empty, because I feel the need to be maternal to an infant, baby, or a child. So my psychiatrist suggested Reborn therapy. I didn't think it was going to work because I worked with real children. I said, okay. Got a custom-made Reborn to look like the child that I always dreamt of. And it was truly amazing how she affected my life. But as time went on, I started to notice things that weren't so realistic, that were bothering me. I thought when I saw the silicones that would be a better fit. But I knew I couldn't afford one. As one that's not even painted would cost me over $2,000. I didn't have that kind of money. But I was grateful to have the Reborn that I had, because many people can't even get vinyl authentic Reborns. But I still felt quite empty inside. Till this little girl, Ella, my full body silicone doll, sculpted by Ina Volpridge, came into my life. That, my friends, is part 3. Welcome, friends, to my part 3 video. It's all about Ella. She's a little slopped over. To give me a minute here. I will adjust her. The creation of Ella. My best friend, who I raised her daughter for, who wanted to carry a baby for me, but we couldn't afford the lawyer fees, saw that I had found a silicone on the McPherson Crafts website. The moment I saw her pictures, before painting and after painting, she was my dream girl. I knew the chances were impossible to have her. And my best friend says, let me buy her for you. And you could send her to an artist or learn how to paint her, because you're already a Reborn artist. I said, that's way too expensive. In Canada, unpainted, Ella would cost $2,600. Unpainted. But she said, please, please let me do this for you. You've gone through a lot. With the way that I took Caitlin back, your hysterectomy, you not being allowed to foster, not being able to afford adoption, not being able to afford the lawyer fees for me to carry a baby for you. Let me do this. I eventually gave in because I knew she would find a way to order her anyway. And I wanted to make sure that she didn't get scammed and it was done properly. So I agreed. So we put her on layaway. It's a very long 4 months. I still wasn't sure how I was going to react to her because she was going to be much different than what I was used to with the vinyl Reborns. But I've became accustomed to making myself as well as an artist. So I opened the box, which you can find on my YouTube account, Precious Little Lambs. So I opened the box, not knowing what to expect. And here's this pale, beautiful baby, silicone doll. When I picked her up, it was unbelievable how real she felt. I hadn't had that feeling since I was a nanny. The boys when they were much, much younger. It was an amazing feeling. Right away I felt joy just by the feeling of holding her. And then I decided that I just loved holding her so much and I wasn't ready to paint her, that I would powder her so I could be able to still hold her, even though she was a pale, kind of looks like what bountiful baby kits would look like when you first get them. Very pale, but a tinge of flesh color. Didn't bother me. I knew she wouldn't be like that forever. So after months and months and months of learning silicone painting and practicing on practice faces that McPherson Crafts will sell to you, I decided it was time to paint Ella. After I painted her, my world changed. Even though she's not real, I didn't feel so empty inside anymore. I didn't feel so broken inside anymore. I started taking her out with me, and everyone couldn't believe it. They tell me how beautiful my baby was. Just those words lifted my spirits. And every time I look at her, and every time I cuddle her, the bottle in her mouth, it sends endorphins into my brain for the maternal instinct that us women carry in our brain. I never understood how that worked until my psychiatrist, who started this journey, explained to me the scientifics behind Reborn therapy. Every woman is different. Some just get it by the feeling of holding on. Some, realism is important or they won't bond. And that is the situation in my case. The more realistic, the more bonding. I've gone through different people through this account. I would say 70% of support, 30% of haters, trolls. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me because I am so grateful that someone loved me so much to gift her to me. Even though she cannot replace Caitlin. She cannot replace the child I will never have. But my arms are not empty. And my dogs are not forced to stay in my arms when I feel the need to cuddle them and hold them when I am depressed. They still get cuddles, they still get love, but that's on their terms, not my terms. You can never truly understand the loss that I have been through unless you've been through that loss. I did this video because it's very hard for me to keep explaining over and over and over again. Why do I have Ella? And why? And what is her purpose? Her purpose is to bring me joy. That is her purpose. Her purpose is to help me want to get out of bed every day and face the world. And she has done that. And I am a Christian. And I do believe that God blessed me with her through somebody else. I do believe that God wants me to have something to bring me joy that is beautiful and a replica of His creation. You can't take away my joy. So I hope that my story helps you understand more why. But please remember, when you go into other people's lives or comment under their pictures or videos, putting them down, you are only causing pain and more trauma. Keep scrolling if you don't like what you see. Everybody has a way of comfort. At the time of my surgery, I was on Percocet, and I could have turned to Percocet for comfort, but I did not. I'm sure a lot of addicts out there wish that there was something in their life that they could have turned to. This is my story, and it is supported by a PhD psychologist. Thank you for watching. Yes.